All right, so today we're diving into some Seattle City Council meeting minutes.
Oh, yeah.
I know. Might not sound like the most thrilling source material,
Right.
but trust me on this one. These minutes, they're like a secret code.
Hmm.
They unlock how the city actually works.
Totally. Like, we're talking about the nitty-gritty of local democracy here, the decisions that impact people's everyday lives.
Exactly. It's the behind-the-scenes stuff that most people don't even realize is going on.
Absolutely.
So we're looking at two meetings from July 2024. Let's jump right in. July 23rd. The meeting starts, as always, with roll call.
The usual.
Yeah, and right off the bat, we see council members Moore and Morales are absent.
Interesting.
Yeah, you might think, okay, a couple people missing, no big deal,
Right.
right? But it actually is significant because in these meetings, every single vote carries weight.
For sure. Every vote represents not just that council member, but the entire district they were elected to represent.
Absolutely. These aren't just names on a page. They're elected officials with a responsibility to their constituents, each representing different neighborhoods, different interests, and those voices need to be heard.
Couldn't agree more.
Okay, so get through roll call. Next up on the agenda is public comment. This is where things get juicy.
Oh, tell me about it. This is where we hear directly from the people of Seattle, unfiltered, like a pulse check on what matters most to them.
Right, so on July 23rd, we had 42 speakers signed up. 42.
Wow. That's a lot of voices wanting to be heard.
Right, and get this, on July 30th, that number jumped to 50.
Whoa. Okay, so something was definitely up in Seattle that week.
Seriously. Clearly, something was on the agenda that was really getting people fired up.
You can bet.
Before we get into the what, though, let's take a look at the structure of the agenda itself. We've got our usual sections, the consent calendar, committee reports, the standard
Well,
fare.
the bread and butter of any council meeting.
Exactly. And speaking of bread and butter, the consent calendar, it's kind of like a restaurant's prix menu.
I like that analogy.
Right. It's basically a bundle of routine items that get approved all at once.
Keeps things moving, especially for those less controversial issues.
Exactly. Saves everyone time and energy. So looking through this consent calendar, I see a lot of appointments to various committees and commissions.
Ah,
On July 23rd, for example, Robert E. Howard was appointed to the Seattle Indian Services Commission. Now, I got to ask, what's the deal with all these boards and commissions?
great question. These groups are like the backbone of city government, you
Yeah.
know? They're made up of experts, community members, people with specialized knowledge in different areas. They advise the council on policy decisions, provide oversight, that kind of thing.
Oh, so they're like the council's brain trust.
Precisely. And they ensure that a wide range of voices and perspectives are represented in the decision-making process.
Makes total sense. Okay, so we've got our routine items taken care of. But let's be real, the good stuff, the juicy stuff, that happens when we move beyond the prefix menu.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What piqued your interest on the main course?
Well, on July 30th, one item in particular jumped out. Cannabis Ordinance CB 120781.
Ooh, cannabis legislation. Always a hot topic.
Right. Now, this ordinance, from what I gather, was all about aligning city cannabis laws with the state level. Seems like Seattle might have been tweaking its approach to regulating this budding industry, if you will.
I see what you did there.
All right. I couldn't resist. But moving on. Also, on July 30th, there was a lot of discussion about a new development project, the 13th Ave, townhomes.
Ah, housing. Always a critical issue in Seattle.
And this one specifically seemed to be a point of interest.
Yeah.
Ultimately, the council approved it, but I'm curious about the context.
Well, Seattle is constantly grappling with growth and development. Townhomes, they're often part of that conversation about density, affordability,
Yeah.
all those big picture issues.
Right, the kind of decisions that shape what the city actually looks like and who gets to live there. Speaking of big picture issues, there's one more item from this meeting that I have to ask about. It sounds a little intimidating, I have to admit. This one's called the Seattle Public Utilities Consent Decree Modification, CB 112-810.
Ooh, now that sounds serious.
Right. I got to be honest, I'm not even totally sure what that means.
Well, a consent decree, that's basically a legal agreement. In this context, it likely means that Seattle Public Utilities, they had to make some changes to how they operate in order to better protect the environment.
Interesting. So we're not just talking legalese here, we're talking potential impacts on the environment.
Exactly. We're talking about things like water treatment, stormwater runoff, all those essential services that affect every single person in Seattle.
Wow. Okay, so from routine appointments to cannabis regulations to potential environmental impacts, it's already clear that a lot goes down in these meetings.
You can say that again. Never a dull moment.
And the best part is, we're just getting started. Okay, so we've talked about the consent decree, this modification, but I'm dying to know. With 50 people signed up for public comment on that July 30th meeting,
Oh, yeah, that's a lot of people.
do we get to know what they said? Like, what were their burning concerns?
Well, here's the thing. You ready for this?
Hit me.
The meeting minutes themselves, they're usually pretty tight-lipped about the actual content of those public comments.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, it's like they give you the who and the when, but not the what.
So frustrating.
Right, like getting a sneak peek at the menu, but not being able to order anything.
Ugh, such a tease. So we're left to speculate then. Any theories on what could have drawn such a crowd?
Well, if I had to put my money on it, I'd say that consent decree modification we were just talking about.
The one for Seattle Public Utilities.
Bingo. That's probably what got people riled up.
Makes sense. Environmental issues, those tend to hit close to home for a lot of folks.
Absolutely. Especially in a city like Seattle with such a strong environmental conscience. People here, they care about their water, their air, their parks, and they want to make sure those things are protected.
So we're thinking this huge turnout for public comment, it's probably a direct response to this consent decree modification.
It's a safe bet.
But then that just makes me even more curious, like, were those comments mostly in support of the modification or against it?
Right. What were the main arguments, the concerns that people were raising?
Exactly. Unfortunately, the meeting minutes, they don't really give us those details.
It's true. We only get a glimpse of the process, not the full picture.
Ugh, it's like a puzzle with missing pieces.
Yeah.
We know the consent decree was modified, it was approved, but we don't know the full story behind that decision.
Right. And that's the thing about local government. It's full of these little mysteries, these debates and discussions that shape our communities in ways we don't always see.
It's like we're seeing the tip of the iceberg, but not the massive chunk of ice hidden beneath the surface.
Exactly. And sometimes it's those hidden depths, those untold stories that are the most intriguing.
Totally agree. This consent decree modification, it might seem like a dry, technical topic, but when you start to dig deeper, you realize it's actually connected to all these bigger questions about the environment, about public health, about the future of Seattle.
100%. It's a reminder that even those seemingly small decisions made at the local level, they can have a ripple effect that impacts everyone.
You know, it's kind of wild when you think about it. We started off talking about these city council meeting minutes, right? And now it's like we've stumbled onto this real-life mystery.
Totally.
Like, what did those 50 people have to say? Were they worried about the consent decree? Were they happy about it? We're left with all these questions.
And that's what's so fascinating about these deep dives. Sometimes it's the things we don't know, the gaps in the record, that spark the most curiosity.
For sure. But I think it also highlights something really important. It's easy to think about local government as this, like, abstract thing. But then you have these 50 people showing up, making their voices heard, and it just reminds you that it's not abstract at all, is it?
Not even a little bit. At the end of the day, it's about people. Real people with real concerns, real hopes for their city.
Exactly. And those concerns, those hopes, they deserve to be heard. It's like we were saying earlier about those council members being absent. Every voice matters in these discussions.
100%. And, sometimes just showing up, making your voice heard, that's the most powerful thing you can do.
Totally. It's like we might not know exactly what those 50 people said, but their presence alone sends a message, you know?
Absolutely. It says, we're here, we're paying attention.
Yeah.
And we care about what happens in our city.
Okay, so we've been talking a lot about this consent decree modification, its potential impact on the environment, the public comments surrounding it.
Right, a lot to unpack there.
Totally. But at the end of the day, we still don't have all the answers, do we?
We don't. And that's okay. In fact, I think that's part of what makes these deep dives so rewarding.
How so?
Because they don't just give us answers, they give us more questions, more things to explore, more to learn about the forces that shape our communities.
So what you're saying is this is just the beginning.
Exactly. Think about it. We only looked at 2 meeting minutes out of, hundreds that happen every year. Each one of those meetings, it's a potential rabbit hole of information, a chance to uncover something new and surprising about the city we call home.
And maybe even inspire some of our listeners to do a little digging of their own.
Now you're talking. Imagine if even one person listening to this decided to check out their city council's website, browse through some meeting minutes, maybe even attend a meeting in person. That's how we build a more engaged, informed citizenry.
And that's how we make local government work better for everyone.
Precisely. When people are informed and engaged, that's when real change happens.
Couldn't agree more. Well, this has been quite the deep dive, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. We went from deciphering meeting minutes to uncovering hidden mysteries, all in under an hour.
And just think, there are countless other stories like this waiting to be told, hidden in plain sight within those city council chambers.
Just waiting for someone to shine a light on them.
So to everyone listening, we leave you with this. Don't underestimate the power of local government. It's not just about potholes and parking tickets. It's about shaping the future of our communities, and that's something we all have a stake in.
So get out there, get informed, get engaged. You might be surprised by what you find.
This is The Deep Dive. Signing off for now. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep diving deeper.